The guns of the Great War finally fall silent, yet a new and invisible enemy begins to march across the globe. It travels not on military maps, but within the very lungs of the soldiers returning to their waiting families. A paradox emerges as the world celebrates peace while facing a tragedy that will claim more lives than combat. History calls it the Spanish flu, but this name is a deception born from wartime censorship and global politics. Why does a global catastrophe bear the name of a nation that was merely honest enough to report the truth? The answer lies in the silence of the great powers, hiding a secret that spreads faster than any army could. This is the story of a microscopic shifting of the world order, an event that redefines human resilience forever. What happens when the machinery of modern civilization suddenly grinds to a halt under the weight of biology? The year is 1918, and the world is already exhausted from 4 years of brutal and industrialized warfare. Global movement is at an unprecedented peak, with millions of troops traversing oceans on crowded transport ships. These vessels become perfect incubators, carrying the virus from the trenches of Europe to the ports of America. Medical science has advanced since the last century, yet it remains helpless against a pathogen it cannot see. Doctors still carry the tools of the Victorian era, while the virus operates with ruthless, modern efficiency. In military camps across Kansas, soldiers complain of fever and aches, initially dismissed as a common cold. But at Camp Funston, the infirmary overflows within hours, signaling the start of the first mysterious wave. Medical officers observe the rapid spread, yet the mortality rate of this spring outbreak remains relatively low. The virus moves with the troops to France, entering the trenches and weakening armies on both sides of the front. Summer arrives and the sickness seems to fade, giving the world a false sense of security amidst the fighting. But within the microscopic world, a deadly mutation occurs, transforming the virus into a lethal biological force. Autumn brings the second wave, which crashes against humanity with a ferocity that history has never witnessed. Governments control the narrative to protect the war effort, strictly silencing reports of this spreading sickness. Newspapers in London, Paris, and Berlin remain quiet, fearing that the truth might damage fragile public morale. Only in neutral Spain do the papers speak freely, reporting on the illness that strikes even the king himself. Thus, the world wrongly attributes the origin of the pandemic to Spain, a label that sticks through the centuries. In a terrifying twist of biology, this new strain does not seek the weak, but hunts the young and the healthy. Those in the prime of their life, aged 20 to 40, find themselves most vulnerable to the severe infection. The immune systems of the strong react violently, triggering a storm that overwhelms the body from the inside. This phenomenon leaves children and the elderly spared, while the strongest generation faces the greatest danger. Vital infrastructure begins to crumble as police officers, nurses, and tram drivers fall ill by the thousands. Basic services falter, and the complex machinery of modern urban life begins to fail under the weight of illness. Cities that never sleep suddenly turn off their lights as ordinances force the closure of all public spaces. Streetcars run empty through the fog, and the vibrant noise of urban life is replaced by an eerie, heavy quiet. Schools lock their doors and theaters lower their curtains, transforming bustling cultural hubs into ghost towns. Authorities in San Francisco mandate the wearing of gauze masks, enforcing the law with strict fines and jail. Debate rages over civil liberties versus public safety, a tension that echoes loudly through the corridors of time. Citizens form leagues to protest the mask mandates, arguing that their personal freedom outweighs the collective good. Yet the virus continues its march, indifferent to political arguments or the boundaries of human laws and borders. Families face impossible choices, isolating loved ones in back rooms to protect the rest of the household members. Traditional mourning rituals are suspended, and funerals become hurried affairs to prevent further deadly contagion. The sheer volume of loss overwhelms the capacity of the undertakers, forcing communities to adapt very quickly. In Philadelphia, city officials ignore warnings and proceed with a massive Liberty Loan parade to support the war. Within days, the city pays a terrible price as hospitals fill every corridor and the system collapses entirely. Bodies pile up in morgues and makeshift storage areas as the city runs out of coffins to bury the tragic dead. Steam shovels are eventually used to dig mass graves, a grim necessity in a city known for its historic order. Medical students are drafted early to serve on the front lines, learning their trade in the crucible of crisis. Nurses become the true heroes of the hour, working until exhaustion claims them, providing comfort amidst chaos. They risk their lives daily, offering water and dignity to patients for whom medical science can do little else. Scientists race against time, but they are fighting an enemy they cannot see with the technology of the era. Electron microscopes do not yet exist, leaving researchers to guess at the nature of this deadly viral pathogen. Treatments are experimental and varied, ranging from aspirin to ancient herbal remedies and seeking fresh air. Innovation arises from necessity, as open-air hospitals are constructed to utilize sunlight and natural ventilation. The pandemic reaches the furthest corners of the earth, from the Alaskan wilderness to the islands of Samoa. In remote villages, entire histories are lost as elders and storytellers succumb to the relentless, sweeping fever. Alaska sees entire communities vanish, leaving only silence where vibrant cultures once thrived in the cold north. Western Samoa loses a fifth of its population in weeks, a devastation brought by a single ship docking at port. The isolation that once protected these islands becomes their undoing, as they lack any prior immunity to the flu. India suffers catastrophic losses, with millions perishing as the virus travels along the extensive railway lines. The Ganges River swells with the bodies of those who could not be cremated, a grim testament to the scale of death. The colonial healthcare systems prove inadequate, sparking early conversations about independence and self-rule. Political unrest begins to simmer as populations realize their governments cannot protect them from this threat. Economies stagger under the strain, with labor shortages forcing businesses to close or drastically reduce hours. Yet, amidst the tragedy, acts of profound charity and solidarity emerge within the stricken local communities. Soup kitchens open to feed those too weak to cook, and neighbors leave supplies on doorsteps for the sick families. The virus respects no borders, no social class, and no rank, striking the wealthy and the poor with equal force. It impacts the peace negotiations in Paris, as world leaders themselves struggle with high fevers and confusion. Some historians argue the virus influenced the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles, shaping the future century. President Woodrow Wilson falls ill during crucial talks, his weakened state potentially altering the map of Europe. As the winter of 1918 sets in, the third wave begins to rise, though it proves slightly less severe than the second. The global population is finally developing immunity, but the cost of this protection has been incredibly high. By the summer of 1919, the pandemic finally recedes, leaving a battered world to count the cost of survival. Societal structures are forever altered as the workforce changes to accommodate the loss of so many young men. Women step into new roles to fill the voids left in factories and offices, accelerating social changes underway. The concept of the Roaring Twenties begins to form, a reaction to the somber years of war and sickness just past. Humanity displays an incredible capacity to recover, to rebuild, and to find joy after a long season of sorrow. Art and literature begin to reflect a new reality, one that acknowledges the fragility of human existence. Writers like Hemingway and painters like Munch capture the mood of a generation that has seen the precipice. But strangely, a collective amnesia settles over the world, as people are desperate to move forward and forget. The trauma is so deep that it is buried, omitted from history books that prefer to focus on the battles of war. Veterans write memoirs of the trenches, but few write about the flu, leaving the memory to fade into the shadows. It takes decades for historians and scientists to piece together the full magnitude of what truly happened then. They dig through archives and sample frozen tissue, seeking to understand the genetic code of the 1918 killer. Estimates of the total loss vary widely, reflecting the chaos of the time and the lack of reliable global records. Modern historians calculate that between 50 and 100 million people perished during these dark years. This figure stuns the mind, representing more souls lost than in both world wars combined in the entire century. It remains the deadliest event in human history over such a short period, a testament to raw biological power. The demographic scar remains visible in data, a missing generation that shapes the future by their sudden absence. Life expectancy in the United States drops by 12 years in a single calendar year, a statistical shock to all. In many regions, the number of orphans rises dramatically, reshaping family structures for decades to come. The insurance industry faces collapse due to the volume of claims, forcing a complete restructuring of the sector. Public health systems are born from this ash, designed to protect the collective rather than just the individual. Nations realize that disease is a global security issue, leading to international cooperation on health standards. The precursor to the World Health Organization finds its roots in the lessons learned from this global failure. The concept of the pandemic plan is born, acknowledging that biology is as significant as military might. Science advances with renewed purpose, determined to unlock the secrets of virology and human immunology. We look back not just at the tragedy, but at the enduring spirit of those who cared for the sick and dying. Their legacy is found in our modern hospitals, our vaccines, and our understanding of global public health. The Spanish flu taught us that borders cannot stop a virus, and that our safety depends on our neighbors. It revealed the necessity of truth in times of crisis, and the danger of placing politics above human lives. The empty streets of 1918 echo with a lesson that resonates through every subsequent generation of humanity. We see the reflection of their resilience in our own challenges, bridging the gap between then and now. The silence is finally broken, and the story of the fallen is told with the dignity and respect they deserve. History is not just about the victors of war, but about the survivors of the invisible battles we all fight. Everything changed in those 2 years, reshaping the genetic and cultural landscape of the entire human race. The memory of 1918 stands as a monument to fragility, but also to the unstoppable force of life itself. The paradox of the 20th century is that its greatest killer was not a weapon, but a microscopic organism. It challenged our dominance over nature and reminded us that we are part of a larger, complex biological system. Yet, from this devastation came the tools that have saved countless lives in the century that followed it. The rapid development of vaccines today owes a debt to the researchers who failed but kept trying in 1918. We learned to track diseases, to quarantine effectively, and to communicate risks to the public more clearly. The global network of health monitoring is the shield we forged from the iron lessons of that terrible winter. As we walk through our cities today, we tread on the invisible history of a resilience that carried us through. The generation that survived the flu went on to survive a depression and another war, showing immense strength. Their ability to endure offers us a perspective on our own struggles, proving that humanity always finds a way. We honor them not by mourning their deaths, but by learning from their lives and the choices they had to make. Every medical advancement we enjoy is a chapter in the long story of our battle against the invisible world. The Spanish flu was a turning point, a moment when the world broke and then healed stronger than before. It stands as a warning to be prepared, but also as a beacon of hope regarding our capacity for adaptation. The numbers are staggering, but behind every statistic was a person with dreams, a family, and a future. By remembering them, we ensure that their loss was not in vain, but a contribution to our collective wisdom. The story of 1918 is not over. It lives on in our science, our society, and our shared human memory. If you wish to uncover more forgotten chapters of our shared history, follow the path to the next video.